"You can't record me without consent," Margaret shrieked, storming up my walkway, her eyes wild with fury. "That's not how the law works, Margaret," I said evenly, arms folded. "In this state, only one party needs to consent to a recording, and that party was me." She stopped short, her expression flickering. "That's not true," she snapped, but there was less certainty in her voice. "You invaded my privacy. You're going to regret this." I never imagined my quiet life among the manicured lawns of Willow Creek would spiral into something that felt more like a crime drama than suburban bliss. It all began when I noticed some unusual activity in their neighborhood, specifically regarding the enforcement of HOA rules. But that's exactly what happened the day I crossed paths with Margaret Voss, the iron-fisted president of our homeowners association. This situation unfolded when a homeowner, armed with a Dashcam, recorded an encounter with a member of their homeowners association. What started as a typical neighborhood dispute quickly escalated into a legal and ethical dilemma when the HOA allegedly destroyed the Dashcam footage, raising serious questions about personal rights and legal boundaries. Margaret's authoritarian streak didn't stop with me. Behind her back, the neighbors had a nickname for her: the Tyrant. It wasn't said in jest. Margaret was infamous for her devotion to the HOA's rule book, a tome thicker than the city's old phone directory. She enforced it with the fervor of a dictator protecting a fragile regime. One neighbor, Mrs. Gonzalez, was fined $50 for having a ceramic frog in her flower bed. Margaret cited unapproved lawn ornaments. Another resident, Tom Jansen, received a cease and desist letter after his teenage daughter parked her car in the driveway for 3 consecutive nights instead of the garage. He was told it disrupted the uniform visual landscape. Even the Johnsons, a retired couple who'd lived in Willow Creek for over 20 years, were told to repaint their mailbox because it had faded 2 shades from the approved color palette. Margaret once left a printed note on their door with swatches from a paint store circled in red. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a pattern, a reign of petty terror that pushed the community to its breaking point. I'm not the kind of guy who likes trouble. I chose Willow Creek because it was quiet, orderly, and predictable. I like tidy hedges, clean driveways, and rules that make sense. I paid attention to the HOA bylaws, paid my dues early, and kept my lawn trimmed to regulation height. I played by the rules, always had. But last summer, I learned that even the most by-the-book neighbor can become a target when someone with a shred of power decides to go rogue. It all started when I decided to install solar panels. With rising energy costs and a growing concern for the planet, it seemed like the right move. I did everything by the book, researched state regulations, submitted meticulous paperwork to the HOA's architectural committee, and received their approval in writing. The installation went smoothly, and for a brief moment, I felt proud, like I was doing something good, something responsible. 3 days later, I came home to find a bright orange violation notice slapped on my front door like a scarlet letter. Margaret had declared the solar panels an aesthetic blight, claiming they tanked neighborhood property values. The notice gave me 7 days to remove them, or face $100 in daily fines. I was floored. I called the HOA office repeatedly, waving my approval letter like a white flag. But Margaret wouldn't take my calls. Instead, she doubled down, sending another notice threatening legal action. I wasn't about to be bullied. I marked my calendar for the next HOA board meeting, determined to speak out. The meeting was held in the stuffy community center, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and lemon-scented floor cleaner. I arrived early, but the place was already buzzing with disgruntled homeowners whispering behind cupped hands. When Margaret entered, navy blazer buttoned to her neck, auburn hair yanked into a bun so tight it looked painful. Every voice hushed. She slammed her leather portfolio on the table. The sound echoed like a judge's gavel. "Let's get started," she barked. When my turn came, I stood up, heart pounding, and calmly presented my case. I held up the signed approval letter, explained the panel's compliance with state law, and made sure to keep my voice even. Margaret's lips curled into a smile that never reached her eyes. "That approval was a mistake," she said with a dismissive wave. "The committee member who signed it has been re-educated. The decision's been reversed." I stared at her stunned. "You can't just undo an approval after the fact. That's not how contracts work." Her smile vanished. "Mr. Carter, the HOA has final say over all exterior modifications. The panels come down." The meeting dragged on, but Margaret's word was clearly law. As I trudged to my car, defeated, another board member, Greg, caught up with me. "She's out of control," he muttered. "Ever since her divorce, she's been unhinged. Your house? It's in her line of sight from her breakfast nook. She hates seeing those panels. This isn't about the rules, it's personal." That's when I knew I needed legal help. I hired a lawyer the next morning, someone who specialized in HOA disputes. He confirmed my suspicions. The HOA couldn't retroactively revoke an approved project. State laws protected my right to solar energy. He drafted a sharp letter citing every relevant statute, and I mailed it off, confident the matter was finally over. It wasn't. The day after the letter was delivered, I came home to find Margaret in my backyard with two men, snapping photos of my house. "What is this?" I demanded. She thrust a paper at me, smug. "Inspection notice. Section 12.3 of the covenants gives us the right to check for violations." I scanned it. "This says you need to give 48 hours notice," I pointed out. "We sent notice," she snapped. "If you didn't get it, that's your problem." What Margaret didn't know was that I had installed security cameras after the first notice. My driveway cam had recorded her slipping the notice under my door 20 minutes before she barged onto my property, nowhere near the 48 hours required. I didn't tip my hand. "Leave my property," I said coldly. "Come back when you follow your own rules." One of the men tugged her sleeve, and she left, hissing over her shoulder, "This isn't over, Mr. Carter." I believed her. That night I checked the footage. Not only had she violated the notice period, but she'd also wandered around my property, peering through windows and poking at my siding. It was harassment, plain and simple. I installed a dash cam in my car the next morning. Just a hunch. A week later, it paid off. I was backing out of my driveway when Margaret stormed across the street, her face twisted with fury. I stopped and rolled down my window. "Morning, Margaret. Something I can help with?" "I just spoke with the county inspector," she hissed. "Your panels violate Code Section 4.6. You'll be hearing from them soon." She was bluffing. My installer had all the permits. I reached toward my glove box. "Funny, I have the county's approval right here." That's when she snapped. Margaret charged up the walk, her eyes blazing. "You can't record me without my consent," she shrieked, hurling the cam to the ground. She stomped it, heel grinding until the plastic cracked. Then she scooped the pieces into her purse and stormed off. She attempted to destroy the dash cam footage, believing it would eliminate any evidence of her aggressive behavior. This act not only highlighted her disregard for personal rights, but also set the stage for a larger conversation about the legal implications of her actions and the rights of homeowners in their communities. I called the police. They arrived quickly, and I showed them my home security footage, which caught her arm reaching into the car and stomping something, though not clearly. "We need the camera," one officer said. "She claims she never touched it," another added. Then I remembered. My dash cam auto-uploaded to the cloud. I checked the app. There it was. Crystal clear footage of Margaret snatching the cam, smashing it, and even a few seconds of muffled audio from inside her purse. I kept my arms crossed, voice calm. "Actually, in this state, Only one party needs to consent. And that was me. She faltered, doubt flashing across her face. That's a lie, she shot back, but her tone wavered. You violated my privacy. You'll pay for this. I already sent the footage to the police, I continued, lifting my phone and tapping the screen. The dash cam uploaded everything to the cloud the second it was yanked off the mount. You reaching into my car, smashing the device, stomping on it like a toddler having a tantrum. Her face flushed a deep crimson. You had no right. No right? I cut her off. You trespassed. You destroyed my property. And then you lied about it to law enforcement. That's obstruction, Margaret. You're not just dealing with HOA politics anymore. You've stepped into criminal territory. She stared at me, lips parted in disbelief, like she couldn't quite grasp the reality unraveling around her. You think you're some kind of hero, she spat, all because you slapped some solar panels on your roof and pointed a few cameras around? No, I said quietly. I think I'm someone who got tired of being bullied by a woman who thinks her HOA title makes her unstoppable. Margaret's breath hitched. For a long second, she looked genuinely rattled, even frightened. Then, like a switch flipping, she pulled her shoulders back and sneered. This isn't over, Mr. Carter. No, I replied, stepping back toward my door. It's just beginning, and this time, the rules apply to you, too. Margaret stared for a long moment. For the first time since I moved into Willow Creek, she didn't have a comeback, just a stunned silence. Then she turned on her heel and stormed away, heels clicking furiously against the sidewalk. I watched her retreat, feeling the scales finally tip. The officers' jaws clenched. They marched back to her house. When the officers returned to Margaret's house with the dash cam footage in hand, the quiet street of Willow Creek seemed to hold its breath. A few neighbors peered from behind curtains as the cruiser pulled up. One officer knocked firmly on the front door. Margaret answered, still in her pressed blazer, lips pursed in a defiant line. Can I help you? She asked coolly. The lead officer stepped forward. Margaret Voss, we have a warrant for your arrest. You're being charged with destruction of evidence, theft, and obstruction of justice. Her composure cracked. This is absurd. I'm the president of this community, she snapped, her voice rising. You people should be arresting him. He's the one harassing me with cameras. The second officer calmly produced a printed still from the dash cam footage. This image shows you reaching into his vehicle and destroying property. You don't have the right to do that, Margaret. Her eyes darted from the image to the watching neighbors. You're all going to regret this, she shrieked as they cuffed her hands behind her back. I built this neighborhood. I protected it. As they led her down the walkway, her voice turned to a bitter hiss. The only sound that followed was the metallic click of the patrol car door closing behind her. 20 minutes later, Margaret Voss was led away in handcuffs, her face a mask of disbelief. She admitted to destroying the dash cam in her garbage disposal. One officer told me, didn't realize that's obstruction of justice, felony, far worse than theft. 6 weeks later, the district attorney's office took notice. The potential penalties for such actions can be quite severe. Depending on the jurisdiction, tampering with evidence and obstruction of justice can result in fines, community service, or even imprisonment. I sat in the courtroom during her arraignment. Her initial charges included theft, destruction of property, and obstruction of justice. The pattern of harassment and unlawful entry led to additional misdemeanor charges. Civil suits followed, including one from a disabled veteran who claimed Margaret refused his request for an accessibility ramp, citing community aesthetics. What began as a petty HOA power trip had spiraled into a full-blown legal crisis. Margaret's attorney attempted damage control, but her actions were well documented. She was ordered to stay away from HOA property and refrain from contacting any Willow Creek residents, conditions that effectively exiled her from the community she once ruled with an iron fist. Margaret's composure cracked. Her mouth trembled, eyes scanning the courtroom, as if hoping someone, anyone, would come to her defense. No one did. The fallout from Margaret's arrest culminated in a packed emergency HOA meeting. The community center was standing room only, with residents murmuring about the Dashcam incident and the police report. Greg, the interim board president, took the podium and cleared his throat. "We need to address recent events involving our former president, Margaret Voss," he began. What followed was a detailed review of her actions, both the criminal charges and the numerous complaints filed against her by residents. There was even mention of how she had once entered a neighbor's backyard to measure the height of a swing set without permission. The board voted unanimously to suspend Margaret from all HOA functions, pending legal resolution. Some residents clapped. Others sat in stunned silence. The tension that had loomed over the neighborhood for months began to lift, like storm clouds finally parting. In the weeks that followed, Willow Creek began to feel like a neighborhood again. The punitive notices stopped. The atmosphere at community events lightened. People lingered at the monthly block party instead of making excuses to leave early. Greg introduced a new transparency policy for HOA decisions, and residents were invited to join committees, including a new Neighborhood Harmony Task Force aimed at fostering communication rather than conflict. The Johnsons repainted their mailbox, but in a color they chose. Mrs. Gonzalez proudly added a second frog to her garden. As for me, I was invited to join the Architectural Review Board, which felt like a small but satisfying victory. It was clear that Margaret's grip on the community had been more damaging than we realized. Her downfall didn't just protect my solar panels, it reminded everyone that power should be used to serve, not to control. As for Margaret, she sold her house 2 months later. Word spread that she'd moved in with a sister across town while awaiting trial. Her downfall became neighborhood lore, whispers over hedges, murmurs at community BBQs. I kept my solar panels. The neighborhood calmed, and for the first time in months, I could sit on my porch with a cold drink, the sun gleaming off my roof, and not worry about a tyrant watching from across the street. The incident ultimately served as a catalyst for change, prompting residents to advocate for a more collaborative and respectful approach to community governance, ensuring that everyone's voice is heard and valued. All it took was one homeowner who refused to bend, and a camera that caught internal justice. A significant lesson from this incident is the value of documenting events for personal protection. Dashcam footage proved to be a vital piece of evidence in this case, illustrating how documentation can provide clarity and support your claims in disputes. Whether it's through video recordings, photographs, or written accounts, having a record of interactions can safeguard your interests and help you present a strong case if needed. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales of resilience and justice. Your support allows us to keep delivering valuable insights and stories that inform and inspire people everywhere. Thank you for watching Work Story, and see you in the next one.